Your time. I'm not sure if you heard what Pop Crew has said. They say, well, they're not surprised by some of the revelations coming out from the state of capture inquiry.
Well, it's quite interesting if they're saying they're not surprised. So perhaps it will give an impression that they may have been knowing about some of the irregularities and the illegalities and corruption that was taking place. But, I mean, as you know, Blaine, I mean, many people are saying they are not surprised, but of course others are saying they are surprised at the scale of the nature of corruption that is taking place. So it's quite an interesting situation as we expect to hear more names of the officials of the government, particularly the Correctional Services Department that will be named today. Remember when Mr. Mti was gone and Mr. Gillingham was no longer around, they needed to find people who would make sure that they protect their contracts, and then they identified certain individuals who then were able to do that. So what Mr. Agrizzi is going to be doing today is that he will be naming some of the people who were key in making sure that the tenders that they had got illegally and some of those extensions so were protected, and they had to have people on their payroll.
Put this into context, yesterday, day 6 was mainly about the findings of the SIU investigation into tender irregularities at the Correctional Services, wasn't it? Absolutely.
It was by and large the report that Mr. Agrizzi was corroborating. Remember, the SIU did the report independent of what Mr. Agrizzi had in terms of the information he had. So it's not necessarily that they spoke to Mr. Agrizzi as they compiled that report. So they used their own sources and then their own investigations, basically similar or rather same to what Mr. Agrizzi had presented to the Commission. So as the legal head of the Commission, Advocate Paul Pretorius, was going through the SI report, Mr. Agrizzi Blaine was able to, by and large, corroborate most of the things that had been said. But surprisingly, Blaine, is that there hasn't been any action, and this report has been sitting there for more than 10 years, but no action has been taken. And I think it will be crucial, Blaine, today, after hearing those names of the Correctional Services Department, I assume, given what the evidence is leading to, I assume that Mr. Agrizzi will actually touch on the workings of the NPA and some of those individuals that also they were able to get hold of and then they were able to work with. So hence there was no movement, despite the fact that there was a report there which recommended criminal prosecutions. In fact, Mr. Agrizzi himself is embroiled in this thing. So it's going to be interesting to hear the evidence today.
That's why we're running a poll today, and we're asking our viewers, is it time for the Bosasa CEO, Gavin Watson, to come forward and, I guess, respond to these allegations? From what you're hearing on the ground, is that pretty much the same sentiment? His name is being mentioned, well, a lot.
Remember, he is the CEO of Bosasa, and from what Mr. Angelo Agrizzi is saying, he is basically saying whatever Gavin Watson wanted, he got. So, because that was his company, I mean, even the decisions on the monies that were to be given, so Mr. Watson had the final weight because he was in charge, or rather he is still in charge of the company. So there is that feeling, perhaps an overwhelming view that given all these allegations that are being leveled against Mr. Watson, so perhaps he needs to come and clear his name and respond really to some of the issues, because the issues center around him. I mean, when Agrizzi tells the commission, he says he was the right-hand man of Mr. Watson. So here is someone who claims to be the right-hand man, and then the man himself really. I think many South Africans would really want to hear his side of the story. I mean, is this scale of corruption that is being spoken about, I mean, did it really happen? So I think that's what many South Africans would really want to hear. But so far, Blaine, we haven't had any inkling from him if he will avail himself to come and perhaps deal with these issues. Yeah. But it's still early days, and Mr. Agrizzi is still on the stand.
Yeah.
And whoever is implicated, I think they have 2 weeks, Blaine, to then approach the commission. Remember, you just can't rock up and say, no, whatever you're telling the commission is wrong. You must apply to the chairperson, and then the chairperson will then grant you that permission to state your version, and not only state your version, also to then be cross-examined.
Yeah. So, Mzwai, in terms of the time frames, you say they have 2 weeks in order to apply for cross-examination. Is it 2 weeks from the start of the testimony or the end?
My understanding is that it's 2 weeks from the start of the testimony. But I will stress this, Blaine.
Okay.
Perhaps it's possible I may stand correction on this one.
Sure.
I mean, Mr. Agrizzi is on day 7 today, yes. Yeah. And I think he's still going to continue because by the look of things, he is nowhere near finishing. So these people who are implicated, they still have the opportunity to come here and clear their names because, I mean, if they don't take this opportunity, I can tell you, in the minds of South Africans, whatever Agrizzi would have told the nation would be the truth and the only truth.
Yeah, Mzwai, as you said, today will be the 7th day Mr. Agrizzi will be giving testimony. Now, I just want to get your perspective. From the time he started till now, have you noticed any changes, be it his attitude or his demeanor?
Well, not really. Perhaps a bit of exhaustion. It's been many days, Blaine. I mean, sitting on that stand, being asked questions, giving all the testimony. I mean, remembering things that happened almost 20 years ago. Somehow, it will take a toll in terms of fatigue. Yeah. But he hasn't really changed his story. He has stuck to his story. He has been saying Bosasa really was a corrupt or is a really corrupt company that got tenders, that got contracts through illegal means. So he is really sticking to the story. That is why, Blaine, I mean, he even says at some point, you remember when he referred to Minister Nomvula Mongonyane, he says they were sitting outside the house of Minister Nomvula Mongonyane himself and Kevin Watson. And then he was basically saying, I mean, Mr. Watson, so do we really still have to continue paying these bribes, engaging in this kind of corruption? Because we are a proper company. We can do the business ourselves, so we can do it the right way. So you can see that he is still sticking to that story to say, despite the fact that, I mean, Bosasa, in some instances, by the way, so they were able to do the work the right way, and they were able to really do the right thing. But given that the corruption had been so much ingrained, so every little small thing, so that had to be done somehow, there had to be a bribe. Even if Blaine, they did not have the knowledge or the expertise for some of the business opportunities because they were so used to doing things the illegal way. So somehow they would find a way, they would get to have a company, then they would basically make sure that the system centers around benefiting them. That is why the Correctional Services Department, Blaine, is really at the center of it all. I mean, he was even going as far as saying Mr. Watson never signed anything. But when it came to the Correctional Services and himself and Linda Mti, they were able to sign an agreement basically which was saying, so every contract and every tender that was going to be issued, it had to go to Bosasa, I mean, or one of those Bosasa companies or one of those funds, because they had completely, in fact, that's what he said yesterday, they had completely captured the department.
Yeah, allegations that surely will be tested. Our reporter Mzwandile Mbeje live for us in Parktown, Johannesburg. Thank you very much indeed for your reporting. 10 o'clock, Parktown, Johannesburg. We'll go there live when the commission resumes. I just want to remind you about, firstly, our poll before we go to our question. And our poll, we'll ask you with regards to this, is it time for Bosasa CEO Gavin Watson to finally come forward and respond to these allegations? And also, on our question of the day, we're asking you with regards to the corruption charges against Duduzane